Hello, friends, and welcome to another Midweek Meditation on the book of Revelation. Today, we are beginning a new section in Revelation. So, I want to begin with a brief review and an introduction. My goal in doing so is to help you see clearly the structure of Revelation. Knowing the structure is what helps us interpret Revelation. In the book, we are being given 7 views of the last days, which are all of the days between the 2 advents of Jesus. I'm representing the whole of the last days with this 7-sided figure. The 7 sides remind us that we are being given 7 views. The first view of the last days is given to us in chapters 1 through 3. It focuses our attention on the church. There are going to be healthy churches and unhealthy, heretical churches, and churches somewhere in between healthy and unhealthy throughout the whole of the last days. The second view is given in chapters 4 through 8, verse 1. That is the section we just finished. Through it, we saw into heaven and saw a 7-sealed scroll. We saw how God, through Christ Jesus, his Son, is unfolding his sovereign plan of salvation. Now, starting with chapter 8, verse 2, we are going to be given another view, a third view of the last days. So, we are not moving from one chronological event to a next chronological event. Rather, we are moving to a different view of the last days. This third view involves 7 trumpets. It goes from chapter 8, verse 2, all the way through chapter 11, verse 19. We can summarize this view with the phrase, plagues of judgment. Plagues of judgment. Today, I'm going to give a helpful overview of this section. And then next week, we will start to dig into some of the details. As part of my overview, I want to show you this list of plagues that fall on the world as the angels sound the first 6 trumpets. As you look at that list, here's a question for you. What do 4 of the plagues bring to mind? If you know the story of the Exodus, you will quickly recognize that 4 of the plagues also fell on Egypt. They are not in the same order as the plagues in Egypt, and not every detail matches, but 4 of the plagues clearly match plagues in Egypt. So, if you know that history well, you cannot help but think of the Exodus event. Look at that comparison with me. Revelation chapter 8, verse 7. The first angel blew his trumpet, and there followed hail and fire mixed with blood, and these were thrown upon the earth. Exodus chapter 9, verse 23. Then Moses stretched out his staff toward heaven, and the Lord sent thunder and hail, and fire ran down to the earth. Revelation chapter 8, verse 8 says, the second angel blew his trumpet, and something like a great mountain burning with fire was thrown into the sea, and a third of the sea became blood. And Exodus 7, verse 20 says, Moses and Aaron did as the Lord commanded. In the sight of Pharaoh and in the sight of his servants, he lifted up the staff and struck the water in the Nile, and all the water in the Nile turned into blood. Revelation chapter 8, verse 12 says, the 4th angel blew his trumpet, and a third of the sun was struck, and a third of the moon, and a third of the stars, so that a third of their light might be darkened. And Exodus chapter 10, verse 21 says, then the Lord said to Moses, stretch out your hand toward heaven, that there may be darkness over the land of Egypt. Revelation chapter 9, verses 1 through 3 say, and the 5th angel blew his trumpet. Then from the smoke came locusts on the earth, And Exodus chapter 10, verse 12 says, "Then the Lord said to Moses, Stretch out your hand over the land of Egypt for the locusts, so that they may come upon the land of Egypt and eat every plant in the land." As I said a moment ago, the details are not exactly the same, but it is enough to remind us of the exodus out of Egypt. So, what we are learning from this section of Revelation is that there is still this war going on between two kingdoms. Satan's kingdom wants to enslave people. Satan does not want the church to increase in number, but God will not let Satan have his way. God is going to pour out his judgments leading up to the final victory. For the Israelites, the final victory was their freedom from Egypt and their enjoyment of the promised land, which would become Jerusalem and Israel. For we Christians today, the final victory will be the return of Christ and our enjoyment of the ultimate promised land, the new heavens and the new earth. These chapters in Revelation should fill us with confidence and excitement as we think about that final victory that is yet to come. Next week, I look forward to digging into these chapters and learning some of those details with you. Before next week, I encourage you to read all of these chapters. Read chapter 8, verse 2 through chapter 11, verse 19. Thank you for joining me. Have a great week.